We have a couple more minutes, so I will play at the beginning once again shortly. Give me 1 second, please. Okay. Okay, it's time for the presentation, everyone. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the second episode of this season's New Music Symposium. My name is Taek-soo Kim. I am a composer and I teach at San Diego State University, and I serve as the curator of this symposium series. Today, I am really excited to have a distinct musician, Gamin, with us today. And as you can see, today is with Gamin. Gamin is a multi-instrumentalist of traditional Korean music and cross-disciplinary collaborations. She plays piri, taepyeonso, and saenghwang. All of them are Korean traditional woodwind instrument. And Gamin is a designated Yisuja, which means senior diplomat, official holder of important intangible cultural set number 46 for court and royal military music. And Gamin featured as a soloist, performing with various orchestras and ensembles, including Yo-Yo Ma's Silk Road Ensemble. And she has collaborated in cross-cultural improvisation at the New School, Roulette, and the Metropolitan Museum. She has produced 5 CDs including one with Ned Rothenberg. And recently she released an album known by Innova Records in September 2020, part of which she is going to talk about today. And recently, congratulations, Gamin. She became the 21-22 Jerome Hill Artist Fellow, and she has been doing a lot of artist residencies and lectures, including at Asian Cultural Council, and she served as a researcher in the James Eugene Kim program in Korean Studies at University of Pennsylvania, and she did lectures and concerts at Harvard, Dartmouth, Brandeis, and University of Paris, Bangkok, and Tashkent. Dr. Gamin received her final degree at Seoul National University with her thesis, Advanced Techniques of Piri, which was published by Minsok Won in both Korean and English, and which also received the Art Research Award by the Seoul Arts Council. So Gamin has been curating several performances at the Center for Remembering and Sharing in New York City, and as a part of Crossing Boundaries series. And if you want to know more about her and her achievements, please visit www.gamin-music.com. And without further ado, please join me in welcoming Gamin.
Hi, everyone. Very nice to see you all. Happy Lunar New Year. I play Korean traditional wind instrument, basically, or like reed instruments, including piri, which is bamboo oboe, and saenghwang is mouth organ, and taepyeonso shown. Today I have piri here, and I can show you another instrument, saenghwang. This has more pipes, so yeah, many pipes make chord and harmony. As a traditional musician, I always wonder, how do we produce a contemporary interpretation out of tradition while preserving it simultaneously? How do we prolong the life of traditional art? Traditional arts in Asia are steeped and intertwined with history and culture. I'm going to tell you how I have been collaborated with many different artists and musicians, culturally and technically, with different cultural background. Before talking about cultural exchange, collaboration, globalization, we have to acknowledge that music always have been developing and tradition has been evolving. We believe that traditional music come from 3,000 years ago. That's true. It has a long history, but traditional music has been created by musicians, and all master musicians invented new genre and they composed new music, and those new music became traditional music eventually. So traditional music was taught by ear, generation by generation. I can give you some some of you must have heard folk music, sanjo. Sanjo is, solo instrumental music. It's very structured and artistic music genre. It is considered traditional music and representative folk music in Korea. But the truth is, Sanjo, scattered melody, was invented by master musicians 100 years ago. So, of course, this music has deep root. Before master musicians create new music based on shamanic ritual music, it has very deep root, but the form and structure has been evolving. And some music, like Shinawi shamanic ritual music, was also performed in ceremony or ritual, but now we perform on a stage for like music, only independent musical genre. So those examples give us, how traditional music composed and became a certain classical music. Also, some of you probably heard about Korean percussion ensemble music, samulnori. Samulnori music is developed by master musician Kim Deok-soo 50 years ago. So some people believe samulnori is traditional Korean music. Yes, it is. It is traditional music, but the form and the genre of the percussion group was created just like 50 years ago. But music come from farmers band music that was performed for village festival and ritual in ancient time. So as a musician, I study traditional music, and also I play new composed music and I improvise. And I want to share how I adopt new idiom and Western music while I play Korean traditional music. So I'm gonna play music for you, and you can hear a short piece of folk music, and I can play some different styles of music with piri. So this is piri. It's the tiny small bamboo flute, and it has reed. So reed has to be soaked in the water before playing, and it has to be open, then make sound. So I made the reed open, and it has to be put together, then I can make sound. It has very old history, probably more than 1,000 years. Most of instruments, Korean instruments, come from China. Some of instruments invented in Korea, but this instrument come from China, and we believe it's come from further China, like Central Asia, somewhere as through Silk Road. So I'm gonna play one folk song. Probably some of you have heard this song. This song consists of 5 pentatonic scale. So most of Korean traditional music has a certain mode with 5 notes, pentatonic. So, and you heard the style of music. It's very there are many ornamentation and vibration and some kind of bending sound. So that is one of the character of traditional folk music. But you know, I explore some different techniques with piri, and I adopt some technique from Western, you know, wind instruments, or I learn some technique from the new composition. So I can play something, you know, tune out of range, regular range, and I can also make some different technique based on you know, contemporary musical elements. Something like that. So this high pitch is never played in traditional music, and some, you know, fingering technique I made, or you know, some flutter tonguing or staccato. Those techniques actually was not supposed to be played in traditional music. So I adopt new idiom, and I explore some new sound with my piri out of pentatonic scale and traditional technique. So based on this experiment, I collaborate with various artists, musicians, and I want to show you one music that I played just a month, 3 months ago. This is performed for Virtual Electroacoustic Music Festival in November 2020. For this project, I worked with composer Elizabeth Hoffman, who is teaching at New York University. So this work is collaboration between my free improvisation and electronic sound. Electronic sound was designed and controlled by composer, so it gives me much freedom because I improvise, and also I was able to interact with computer sound.
Wow, this is fascinating. Who knew that piri and electronic sound would get along so well together like this?
Yeah, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So I switched the instrument when I play music from piri to saenghwang. So it has different movement, and I made interaction with computer sound. It was fun, yeah, project. I would like to share my musical collaboration with various artists that will give you many different ways how we exchange different ideas. Recently, I released a new album, which is called No. It is cross-cultural collaborative music project. I worked with Korean and American composers. The title No is actually ancient term meaning to play, and this is quite central idea for the project. So like a play. When we say some musical technique, we also use this term no. So if I say when I play piri, you heard some vibration with my piri, and we say it nong. Nong is play, and is sound. So this concept became my central idea to play with different musical instruments and forms and different cultures and ideas. So I worked with 5 different musicians. One musician is Ukrainian Canadian composer Anna Pitgorna, and one music was composed by myself and Ned Rothenberg. That was co-composition, and 2 music was composed by American musician, and 1 music was composed by Korean musician. So each piece has all different characters, and we collaborate different way. So I'm so excited to share all different types of music, how we create it. So each piece has different character, and none of these music composed by composer independently. The process of composing has to be discussed and collaborated. So we learned a lot from each other, and my collaborators, composers studied Korean music, rhythm, mode, fingering technique, and musical character. So we exchange it and experiment how we can learn different language from each other. I want to share one of the piece from this album.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, looking at all those things and then your explanation is fascinating. Thank you so much for all this talk. One of the titles just caught my eyes. That is Mudang, which means shaman, right? And then I wrote a couple of pieces about them as well. But so it's just natural to me to pay attention to that piece as well. So can you tell me a little bit about that piece?
Yes, Mudang is Korean word, and it is shaman. Composer Theodore Wippert composed music based on Korean traditional rhythmic cycle. So it is new composition, and it is nothing similar to traditional music. If you listen this music, you would feel very different from traditional music. But the idea is come from traditional music sanjo. So sanjo usually have one instrumentalist, like soloist, and 장구 hourglass drum, always accompanied with soloist. So this piece has string quartet, and string quartet take a role for like a jangu player, so percussion player. So they sometimes accompany and play some rhythm, but sometimes we switch the role. So it is very playful playing with string quartet SL. And I cannot play whole piece, but this piece has many different rhythm, from slower rhythm to faster rhythm. But yeah, I can play a short part from this piece.
Wow, yeah, another fascinating music. And yeah, I was doubting like how string could sound percussive jungle like, but it really does sound like a jungle. And also the rhythmic pattern, the jangdan, sounds also familiar to me. I mean, as a Korean person, we grew up with this kind of music. So yeah, I mean, the composer did a wonderful job to deliver that essence or the gist. And then of course you sound great as well.
Thank you. Yeah, the composer Theodore Wipud wanted to study shamanic, ritual music and sanjo, and really seriously studied rhythm, and he really bring those traditional elements. But other than that, actually, the mode or scale, those actually I had to learn a lot different fingering because of out of pentatonic scale, and there are a lot of different types of scale. So we quite discussed what would be good for fingering out of pentatonic, and some of notes composer wrote, but sometimes fingering is awkward, but I try and learn the new fingering gesture. So it was challenging, but it was fun.
Yeah. Speaking of which, so you are inventing, you are technically inventing lots of different techniques and fingerings. And Juwon Park on Facebook asked, have you written a textbook or resource to just share all your techniques with other piri performers or others who are interested?
Yeah, I actually published the book Advanced Techniques of Piri, and that I wrote about technique of piri. not only new technique, but also traditional technique, because most of composers, I mean, even Korean composers, or who trained Western composition, doesn't know about traditional musical technique and sources. So I wrote some of traditional technique from court music and folk music. Actually, those techniques are very very unique. You would not find any from any other instruments. So I wrote about traditional technique, and I also wrote about new technique that I kind of invented, explored, kind of multiphonic sound. You heard some kind of noisy piri sound on that piece. That piece need some different embouchure, your breathing. So those are all in that book, so you can find the sources.
That's great. So are you using Western notation in that book mostly? Because that's the question we get very often.
Yes, there are two ways to describe. So I indicated some traditional notation, and also it's transcribed for Western notation, so you can understand how it sounds and how it can be transcribed.
So in Korea, when did you learn Western notation, or did you begin learning with Western notation when you began learning piri, or was there other instruments you learned first?
Yes, instrument piano was 7 years old. So I played in Western notation. Music was mature, and I learned violin when I was 10. So I was very familiar with classical music and Western notation. Then I started to music. But in Korea, I went to specialized Korean music school. A school has very advanced system, educational system, and most of Korean traditional music actually transcribed for Western notation. So we use both. Some court music piece was written in traditional notation, which is called 정간보. So we still use those old notation, and we learned when we play traditional court music. But folk music actually is not written music. Folk music just played, composed, and it is just taught by ear. So scholars and musicians transcribed those folk music later on. So when I was in school, some of music I couldn't find, exact transcribed, score. So I try to transcribe. Sometimes my teacher play music, and I transcribed, and there were transcribed music sheet. So we used both.
I see. Wow. Okay. Fascinating. So if you, like me, if you have any other question, I am talking to the audience here and on Facebook, please leave us comment or question on the chat or on the comments window so that I can deliver it to Gamin, Dr. Gamin today. And let's just talk about another piece in your album. There is a lot of intercultural interaction going on in that piece, and then one of the titles kind of symbolizes it in a very interesting way. It's called Jumori Blues, right? And then is that the blues we are thinking about, the American blues?
Yes, exactly. I collaborated with jazz musician. Especially for this piece, I worked with Nat Rothenberg, who is saxophone player, clarinet player, and composer, experimental musician in New York City. This piece originally commissioned for New York Sanjo Festival in 2018, and I collaborated with Ned, and we ended up to co-compose piece. In the beginning, we just improvised based on Sanjo, which is Korean traditional shamanic ritual music that developed for solo music. And I, because Hanjo music is based on improvisation, and Ned Rothenberg brought idea of jazz, and he suggested to put some blues mode in that piece. So I learned the blues, the mode, and he learned Sanjo mode, and we improvise. So in the beginning, we just improvise multiple times. And then we found out, oh, this is the way, this is the direction we can compose. So this co-composition was really exciting work. We used Korean traditional Sanjo rhythm, like, Mudang used Sanjo rhythm. But this music, we brought not only, rhythm, but also mode, and we exchange it culturally. So, blues also was developed by, enslaved African American based upon African traditional and religious music. And similarly, Sanjo music also developed very, by ritualistic music. So there was similarity, and musically, these music are both improvisation. So based upon this, shared history, we conceived Jumori Blues. Jumori is name of the rhythm of Korean, and blues is, jazz music. So that's how we combined traditional Korean winds, piri and taepyeonso, with Western instruments often appearing in the blues, such as bass clarinet and saxophone. So during this piece, I switched the instrument from piri to taepyeonso, and Ned Rothenberg played bass clarinet in the beginning, and later on he switched to saxophone. So in the beginning, piri and bass clarinet, and in the end, saxophone and taepyeonso.
Okay, so yeah, I cannot wait to listen to it. So is the part we are going to watch together is you playing the taepyeonso or the piri?
Yeah, this is piri part.
Okay, but yes, let's listen to the Jumori Blues. Wonderful. Wow. It's almost uncanny. Like it's so they go get along so well together. So it's hard for me to tell which is exactly the blues influence and which is exactly the Korean flavor within. Sometimes it's just and of course there is some other elements as well. But did it just happen, or did you have to work around it to make it so melonged well together?
Interestingly, oftentimes I heard whenever I play piri, many American people say, "Oh, sounds like saxophone," or "Oh, sounds like jazz." That was very interesting for me. I never ever imagined I play jazz, or I didn't I have no intention to copy or but naturally I think the way of expression probably is similar. And my sounds of piri, piri sounds is very earthy, and it has a lot of free gesture, like bending up, down, and vibration. And those sounds quality and character probably give some sense similar way to jazz. But it was just naturally combined together. Actually we couldn't listen whole piece, but there are solo part following up, like a drum solo and clarinet solo and my solo, like kind of jazz structure.
Wow. Yeah, I cannot wait to check out the whole thing for sure. And then I'm sure lots of us here would feel the same way. We have two questions to just refresh our discussion a bit. So Julie's iPad, whose actual name I'm not 100% sure, asks, what's the favorite part of playing the piri for you? What is the most interesting thing about playing the piri?
When I discover like a new direction, that's very exciting. And sometimes piri is quite intense. Piri need a lot of controlling with your embouchure, breathing, and it need a lot energy. You have to you have to keep your power in your body. It's like very physical. But so when you see the traditional piece, there are long piece for gayagum, string instrument, but piri, it's rare to play like long piece except for court music. Like sanjo, usually piri sanjo take 25 minutes. Gayagum sanjo take more than an hour. So it's actually need a lot of strength to play. But when I feel really connect with other music or art, and when I really feel free, actually I can go longer and over, and that is the most exciting part when I play music, especially piri. It's there are some way to explore different technique and different sound with piri, even if it is very limited instrument. It has only one octave and 1.5. It's very narrow, so sometimes composers ask oh, there is no higher notes, no lower notes, something like that. But with those limited range and those those limited power, it is fun to explore, how I can go different direction to discover new sounds.
Yeah, that sounds like a fun, and you just keep exploring your own instrument, and there's no boundary. The boundary comes just only with your own limit, and then if you don't admit the limit, you can always go further. And I think that's really fascinating to see how it gets more and more developed. And your name has been appearing in this symposium series several times. Actually, last season, some composers brought the performance of yours. We watched your performance. Sometimes that it shows lots of how prolific you are and then how active you are in the world of new music. And at the same time, what I have noticed is your collaboration is not just with musicians only. You sometimes work with other types of artists, like visual artists and all the other multimedia stuff you're doing. I think that's also very interesting. And I assume there is another piece like that in your album, the one called Burzel Paradise. Could you tell us a little bit about that piece as well?
On the courtship displays of Burzel Paradise is composed by Ukrainian Canadian composer Anna Pitgorna. This piece in Princeton, New Jersey, actually a couple of years ago. So Anna composer had an idea to make a film. So basically this music is about birds, and it's music. Her idea come from courtship display of birds. So it's very interesting a way to express, and mimic. So there are 3 movements of this piece, and each piece describes different types of birds and different shape, different sounds. If you watch, birds courtship display, it's incredibly interesting. Their gesture, their shape, their sounds, their movement is like a dancer, an artist. It's beautiful and unique, very unique. So composer actually brought that idea, and she wrote a piece about those birds gesture. So each movement describes different birds and different sounds. So when I perform this piece, actually we set up different location. For example, this music was premiered at the Soundstream Festival in Canada. I started to play music from the back side of the audience, and then we put a music stand in the middle of the audience, and then another 3 music stands on a stage, front and back, and side. And then I just came back to audience, and I just disappeared, backside of audience, something like this. So the birds, it's like all the movements, gesture, and making sounds was like birds. So I was supposed to be a bird, female bird, and I just fly to somewhere else, and I play music, and I make some sounds. So sometimes I made some sound with my step. I wore hard shoes, and I made some sound, and I walked to the stage, and I play music, and there were male birds who play accordion. So that is actually very interesting combination between saenghwang and accordion, because those two instruments has similar structure, sound very similar, even if, saenghwang has, old history. It has more than 1,000 years of history, and accordion also has quality of those making chord. So very interesting combination, and accordion also made like a bigger gesture, when musician play instrument. But saenghwang is, kind of thin and tall, and it's a kind of contrast. So accordion present some male bird, and with big gesture, attract female bird and making some sounds, musical sound. And we play together. Sometimes we play separate, but we make some conversation. And eventually, female bird was just wandering, around him. Then she just left. And the male bird was disappointed, and that was the ending of the music. So it was like all acting. Actually, I mean, we didn't speak, or we didn't act, but the whole story and the gesture of music was like a theater. So Anna is composer. Also, she is a visual artist. So she designed film. We went to park in Princeton, where she was doing her PhD at Princeton. We filmed with music. We played music, and also we filmed with some movement. So it's not only playing music outdoor or filming. We just we kind of made some movement like bird. Sometimes I climbed up to the tree, and I just sitting there, and I just looking at the other musician, male birds. Sometimes I made some gesture like bird, and some those kind of movement, and we brought some idea from environment. So it was very interesting collaboration with movement, film, visual elements, beyond musical collaboration.
Wow, fascinating. Okay, so let's watch a bit of On the Courtship displays Burzel Paradise. Wow. I played a little longer than I was supposed to because I was so mesmerized by the visual and the performance as well. The sound is fascinating, and the visual is also really really well done. Where were you actually wearing the blue shawl, or is it just okay? So it is
Yeah.
actually the blue shawl.
Yeah.
Huh.
So three movement. I used three different colors of scarf. So each movement, represent different types of birds. So I wore, different color.
Wow. Yeah. And yeah, it does sound like a bird, and also it's very interesting that the knocking sound is a motive. Basically, it's a motif, and it's also a visual motif as well, with just footsteps. And that was really really a great integration of visual and oral elements, I think. And wow, and I cannot wait to watch the whole thing. um, okay, since we have limited time, we are going to move forward a bit. But this time you are going to introduce us a piece by a composer in Boston, right? So, and also a
Yes.
Korean composer, yes. So who is
Yes.
that?
Yeah. Yeah, I worked with composer Eun-young Lee, who is based in Boston. And we performed it actually in Boston, and I played music with two string player who also live in Boston area. So this piece is called Baguni. Baguni means basket in Korean. So this music comes from composer's memory of her grandfather used to make baskets with leftover plastic strings. So through her memory, this music became very contemporary sound, and she put some Korean folk tune in this music, but it is really hard to recognize if there were like folk tune in this music, because it is very conceptual, abstract, and it's just hidden. So the idea comes from melody, folk song melody in this music, but it's not in front. So it's really almost you cannot hear the melody, but the idea is based on traditional folk song and her memory of grandfather, and culturally our grandfather, their generation, they recycled with plastic and whatever. They didn't throw out small things. So this is music for piri and saenghwang, and violin and cello. So I played with violinist Omar and cellist Rafi. Both of them are in Boston. And we premiered a couple of years ago in Boston, and we recorded music, and finally it came out in with my new city.
That's great. By the way, I put the links to the city on Innova Recordings and Amazon as well on the chat, and then on the comments on the Facebook. So if you're interested, please visit those websites as well. But for now, let's listen to Baguni by Eun-young Lee, performed by Gamin and others. Okay, that was a small part of Baguni by Eunyoung Lee. Where was the folk tune? I just couldn't hear it. I think you're muted.
There are saenghwang part after piri, and there will be hidden melody. But this part has more piri character with strings. So I hope you can listen whole piece later.
Okay, that's a way to promote the piece. That's good. And so another question I have is, how does it work with respect to balance? So piri and well, taepyeonso is extremely loud, as I understand, and saenghwang somewhat, and also piri. And do they work well with so-called Western instruments?
Yes, actually, balance was always considered, when people, try to write, traditional instruments. But my instrument, I mean, it is quite loud. Piri and especially taepyeonso is very loud. But if you make it is not only about volume. If you have some like a conversation in structure, actually the volume is not a problem at all. And most of time actually I can control volume. So piri is quite very flexible instrument. Pitch wise, volume wise, it can be flexible. So I can volume down, or pitch also can be flexible. So it is adjustable. And saenghwang is very naturally mixed with Western instrument that I was discovering whenever I played with violin or clarinet, other Western instruments. Whenever I played saenghwang with other Western instruments, it's really well mixed. And taepyeonso actually seems difficult to make balance with other soft instrument. But I played with string quartet last a year and a half ago, actually in Boston, at the Brandeis University. Composer Yoonji Lee, Korean composer, wrote a piece for string quartet and taepyeonso and electronic sound. But it was really well balanced, because composer make some structure for music, and there were moments that we make ensemble and same time conversation. We switch the word, and those structures make really well balanced. And taepyeonso supposed to be presenting some some kind of strong character and powerful energy. So it has to be existed in the piece. And so I'm very confident to make a balance with others.
That's great. So whoever would want to write for those instruments, just should not fear for any balance issue, but just ask Gamin to play it, and then you will make it happen. Okay, we have another piece by another Bostonian composer, William David Cooper. His piece is titled Variations. Well, I mean, that's a movement title. Can you tell us about the piece a bit, and then we will listen to the piece together?
Two pieces for piri and strings. So variation is second movement. This is composed by William David Cooper. American. So he doesn't have any Korean, cultural background at all. But he took some presentation of me when I visited UC Davis. He took my presentation, and he had idea about Korean, piri character and sounds. So he mostly used those pitch change. So I saw his program note and his explanation about this piece, and his impression of piri was piri has like a long crescendo, glissandi, and wide vibrato. So those characters he captured, and he made piece, and it is really beautiful music. I really enjoyed to play.
Excellent. So we will now listen to variations from two pieces for piri and string trio by William David Cooper. So that's the ending of this movement, right? And wow, also fascinating. And with this one doesn't really sound like a Korean at all. Yeah,
Right.
and also, yeah, even the timbre of piri does not deliver any cultural background for some reason. It just sounds like a totally new music. That's another astonishing achievement in a way, because you completely decontextualize the instruments, isolate the sound from its background, which is, I think, great. So we're getting lots of interesting questions, but before asking those questions, I would love to ask you one more about a big topic. So when I introduced you in the beginning, you also do an intercultural, cross-cultural collaboration. And then, so is there any more than this? Already, it's all super diverse with respect to where all these composers and their influences are from. But clearly, you have some more when you mention cross-cultural collaboration. Could you elaborate it a bit, please?
I used to play a lot of composed pieces, and I used to, collaborate with Western, musician, classical music, musician, contemporary composition, and jazz. But I had a lot of question. Why or most of Asian, and traditional musician collaborate with Western, musicians. And I discovered, a lot of, different culture from Asia, from, Central Asia, from any other, cultural background. So it was really fascinating to learn and work with other musicians from different backgrounds, especially non-Western cultural background. And I have been working with East Asian musicians like Japanese, Chinese, because we have some similarity, even if music has developed different way. Most of the instrument music come from China in ancient time in Korea, but Korean instrument have been developing and Koreanized, and we have totally different, musical system, mode, and technique from any other, Asian country. So music, music has developed in different way in each country. But there are a lot of similarities that I found out. So it is very interesting to see what is similar way and what is different from, even if we came from something, similar root. So those questions made me to find and other collaborate with other musicians. So recently, really interestingly, I happened to work with American, bass player and composer, whose name is Matt Muntz. But his background, he come from Croatia, and he discovered Croatia bagpipe. So he actually composed music for taepyeonso, Korean traditional instrument, and Scotland, bagpipe and drum bass. So we performed music at the Shed outdoor, music event a couple of years ago when the Shed opened. It was really, really new, new exciting work with, bagpipe and taepyeonso, drum, bass, and, piri. And there were even invented, reed instruments. So it is all about reed from different, cultural background. So for this concert, I improvised with Croatian, bagpipe, which is different from Scotland bagpipe. It is really, it really looks like, nature. It's come from like animals level, and it's the shape is like a very origin, but the sounds, somehow the sounds are really well mixed with my piri. So we had really fun to play and we improvised, and I just want to share some of those little improvisation sessions.
Okay, so we'll watch the improvisation session together now. Okay. And the title is When We Took the Fire. again, I was supposed to stop it a little earlier, but I just wanted to see how it's developing because it's so enthralling and wow, yeah. Thank you for sharing all these wonderful works that you did. This is really remarkable and diverse. I mean, how can you even, I cannot even imagine what your recital would be like because you're doing so many different things and how to combine all different pieces into one recital or one concert is seemingly almost impossible, but at least you can find a lot of them in your album. So it's going to be great. As I promised, we have some wonderful questions here. Yes, and comments as well. So on Facebook, we have Eunmu Ha, and she says hi, and Yunji Lee also says hi, who you worked with, and Juan Park, and also Astrina Rasias says hello from Montreal, and lots of these warm comments. Also, Julie in this Zoom session is saying, that sounds amazing. It sounded like coming from the nature. I think that's very accurate description. Eunmu Ha asked a question that, have you ever written some computer parts when you did some collaboration with electronic musicians?
When I worked with electronic sound with composer, some piece was written for piri, and I played written music, and computer sound was operated by composer. But today I played some improvisation session with electronic sound. So it has different types of music I have been working on.
That's great. Jean An, it's very heartwarming to see all those our old guests come back to see or watch and our series. It's building a community, I think. But Jinan is asking you this question. Let me just read it. Since you have done a lot of collaborations, can you tell us which one did work and which one was less successful? So can you give us some advice?
That's very difficult question. I mean, it has all different way and outcome also, very different. But each one, every single collaboration has different approach, different idea, and different outcome. So it is hard to say which one was less successful or more successful. I think it just has different taste, different style. So probably some people don't like chord bass, harmony bass, like tonal tone with collaboration. Like sometimes I can play actually melody, like a Western music melody with my piri, and some it can be accompanied by piano or guitar and make really like a harmony. Some people can say it is really successful if you like it. Actually I can play melody and it can be harmonized with any Western instrument, but some people can say it is less successful because it doesn't have Korean identity or character of music. So it depends what is your goal, what is your approach to create music. If you really want to emphasize Korean character or making music like a Western style, you know, it has different idea, I think.
Wow. Yeah. Thank you for the insightful answer. That's very deep. Julie Gittler in this Zoom session is asking a very interesting question. So if you collaborate with the Boston Symphony Orchestra, which piece would you play with them?
Oh, that's a good question and sounds very exciting. I have played with a couple of orchestra piece with piri and saenghwang, but I since orchestra will be like can make some like a rich sound. I wanna make very energetic, cheerful sound and music. Probably I will want to play piri and switch to taepyeonso and make something super energetic music. Actually, I worked. Actually, I had a piece that I wanted to play with Boston Symphony. That piece was composed by Anthony Paul de Rittis, American composer who is in Boston and teaching at Northeastern University. He wrote a piece for orchestra, and I was involved with that piece, and I played piri, and there was some improv section, and orchestra make really exciting rhythm and sounds. That was titled Melody for Peace and performed many years ago. But anyway, the music is very powerful, exciting, and playful, cheerful. So I want to play those types of music if I have a chance. Hopefully I can have.
Yeah, I mean, artistic directors at Boston Symphonies should watch this and then should contact you right now. Okay, are there any other questions? But before I end this, we end this meeting, I have one more question. It sounds like COVID hasn't stopped you from creating music because you are just so active even during this pandemic. So because you have lots of gigs, you are getting big grants. So what's the secret?
Actually, COVID pandemic affect a lot to everybody. And it was really frustrating. I couldn't play, ensemble for many months. I practiced and I recorded music by myself, and I did some Zoom event, at home. But I really missed, ensemble. Only way that we created something, edited version of ensemble that was actually not a real, ensemble music. So that's really I missed. But we cannot stop creation. We cannot stop playing music. I one day I just went to the park, and I played music and I recorded music. And one day I went to I met my colleague dancer, and we just improvised. He danced and I played music and outdoor. We didn't have any clothes contact, and we just keep distance and just, improvise, and we filmed. So those kind of, experience was very challenging and frustrating, but it gives us, different experience, and probably give me different expression. So it is really, it has been challenging, and everything had changes, but I believe we are continuing creation, and it will turned out something really great in new way.
So right, yeah. One of the things that you went through is your performance at Carnegie Hall. So I hope it comes back right after the pandemic is gone. So, and I cannot just wait for that opportunity coming back. So what's the next step for you? Speaking of continuing creation.
This year I'm doing artist residency at here Art Center in New York City, and also I will start new fellowship with Jerome here Foundation. So I collaborate with Japanese musician and visual artist. We are exploring Asian perspective and Asian expression of emotion. So we are creating some new piece, so that will come in this year. And for as a fellowship artist for Jerome Hill Foundation, I will more focus on creation, like composition. So I hope to compose some new pieces and make new direction.
Fabulous. Yeah, I wish all the best for all these wonderful projects and competitions, and please share all these things with us, and we will be delighted to be just watching your progress and your marvelous outputs and outcomes. I would love to be mindful of our time. It's 8:30, so I think we are going to dismiss soon. Next week, we will have composer Ji-young Kim, who's also known for lots of different things, among which she has incorporated some Korean elements in her pieces, including her opera she wrote for the Houston Grand. And so we will have another meaningful session next week. But until then, I hope you stay safe and stay musical. And I will see you next week. Thank you for joining us.